Good evening, welcome back to Hux Media and welcome back to the History of series. This time we venture into the world of radio and one of Britain's most successful and influential radio stations. This is the history of Capital. Before the 1970s, there was not a lot of choice when it came to listening to the radio. There was the BBC, and apart from a few offshore pirate radio stations, that was about it. This all changed in 1972 when the Sound Broadcasting Act was enforced, which enabled the launch of commercial radio stations in the UK. However, Capital launched 2 years earlier, but it didn't have the proper licence to broadcast until the Act was passed. On the 8th of October 1973, the first independent radio station LBC launched. There featured discussion, news and phone-ins. 8 days later, on the 16th, the next station to come from Capital Corporation, Capital London, launched. This was focused on more entertainment and broadcasting music to the City of London. During the mid-70s, Capital wanted to further popularise their brand. They transitioned to more pop music and hits in 1974, and now they could increase its broadcasting hours. You see, until this point, Capital was under needle time laws, limiting the amount of recorded music they could play and broadcast. With this out of the way, Capital could play as much music as they liked, and this would lead the station to a new era of popularity. But they also had to compete with others, as the BBC was pressured by these laws as well. One of the more memorable moves Capital made in the mid-70s was the creation of the Capital Radio Helpline, as part of a franchise partnership with Thames and London Weekend Television, which may be associated by the public as ITV Regions, but they were their own respective corporations. On the helpline, listeners could call in and have their problems solved. The station became increasingly popular in the 80s. Even though a lot of its beloved presenters left to join Radio 1 or 2, new presenters would join and host their own shows, such as Chris Tarrant, joining in 1984. Capital went on to experiment with new genres of music such as hip-hop, soul and jazz, and solidified itself as a popular music station. Capital really saw itself progress in the 1990s, as it introduced many new stations that focused on their own respective type of broadcasting. You had now incredibly popular and beloved stations such as Heart, Classic FM and XFM, which was renamed to Radio X in 2015. As of now, Capital isn't only a radio station, but an expansive corporation with many stations under its name. And that's all for this mini-documentary on one of Britain's greatest commercial radio stations. Tune in next week for a discussion video on ITV's brand, but for now, I've been Hux Media, wishing you all a good night. Good night.